I think if I hear you call me Becky one more time, six-pack, I'm gonna pop your tops. All six of them.
Who are you?
My name is Martin, and I'm 84 years old. People think I'm crazy when I tell them how old I am, or else they think I'm some kind of ghost.
From the director of Night of the Living Dead, Martin, another kind of terror.
I just have a sickness. I just need to drink blood.
Hey there, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another review, and this is for Mr. Majestic. It's another Patreon review. Thank you so much for that. If anyone's interested in requesting any reviews or re-reviews, topics, reactions, any type of videos, you just send a request either directly to my PayPal or join me on my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. But this time it's a review for Martin from 1978, give or take. It's a George Romero film. George Romero, may he rest in peace. My favorite of his would be Dawn of the Dead, also like Monkey Shines, Day of the Dead, The Dark Half. Martin is one of those films that I think it's okay. I never really loved this film like a lot of people did, but watch it again, you know, it's not a bad film either. In particular because of John Amplas' lead performance, who plays the title character Martin, who sort of the film is he a real vampire, or is he just a guy who thinks he's a vampire? Even by the end, you're kind of thinking, okay, he'll call into the radio going, well, no, that's not what vampires really do. They don't get burned by sunlight. Yeah, sometimes it hurts my eyes. And no, crucifixes and such don't work. Or the flip side is that he's with this family, including his grand uncle, which he has moved in with, who perhaps throughout the years has done to his brain that, oh, your upbringing, you are a vampire, so you go think this way. Does upbringing make him think he's a vampire? Because, you know, he'll use razors and such to drink blood, injection needles to make it so that they can't get away. And one of the first scenes is on a train where we see one of these attacks, and we see sort of the way Martin thinks of himself in reality. The way Martin thinks of himself is this sort of romanticized version of perhaps a vampire, where it's black and white and the sweet music, and the woman like beckons him with open arms and it's beautiful. But in reality, he goes in, she's got this makeup stuff on her face, this cream on her face, and it's much more rough and it's much more violent, and it's definitely not operatic and beautiful like he imagines. This is how it really is. So he'll inject the women, slit their wrists or whatever, razors, and drink their blood. Now, like I said, he moves in with his granduncle who, first I will save your soul, then I will destroy you. Like, he thinks Martin is a vampire. And Martin, I guess he thinks he's a vampire, but he also mentions that there's no magic about it. You see, isn't magic? Even I know that. Crosses, Darlet, none of that works. And the movie's kind of I don't want to say a day in the life, but it takes place more than one day, but showcasing the little bit of life of this guy Martin. And while he's there, he meets up with his cousin, played by Christine Romero, who later married George Romero. I forget how long they were married, but it was for a while. And she does fine in her role. Tom Savini, I think this is before he had, I think he had a type of nose surgery later on, because he looks a little bit different here, and he doesn't have his mustache. But it's like, oh, cool, there's Tom Savini, who, this was one of the first movies he got to work on effects-wise. And so George Romero said, hey, how about you act as well? So he acts as the guy who is hooking up with Christine Romero, and Tom Savini has a couple scenes. I always thought Tom Savini did fine in the acting, whether it be in Dawn of the Dead, Night Riders, he was in Planet Terror, From Dusk Till Dawn. I always thought Tom Savini did fine in the acting. Part of me wishes he was in the film more, but it is what it is. And when it comes to the gore, Tom Savini's effects is definitely not as extravagant as you would see in Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Creepshow, among others, or even films like Friday the 13th, Maniac. It's more little stuff, like opening up the arms, like the razor blade with the fake blood. There's a staking in the end, and I will say that's not as strong as it could be, because I kind of see how they did it, and it looks a little bit wonky, which I'll get to why I say that in a minute. But again, I would say that the movie, I don't think people put it on their favorite vampire films list. It would not be on mine, only to the fact of I would put Fright Night 2, The Lost Boys, From Dusk Till Dawn, John Carpenter's Vampires. Those I give more out of on a vampire. Whether it be I find them more exciting and more interesting, or the characters more interesting. John Amplas does a good job as Martin. The other actors do fine. George Romero himself plays a priest or a minister, one who's willing to smoke and such as well. And this is going to sound weird, but watch this again. I think one of the things is it was nice to see George Romero, even though it was for a little bit, acting wise, and then knowing that he directed this, because he always seemed like a really nice guy. Never met the guy, but you never heard a bad thing said about George Romero. You only hear stories how he treated people very well and treated them with respect, and he was always nice and kind, and I think he made quite a few good movies. And it's just sad that so many of those directors, him, Wes Craven, Larry Cohen, Tobe Hooper, Stuart Gordon, like so many of them are gone now. Well, the only ones left is John Carpenter. And you maybe throw in David Cronenberg, maybe Joe Dante. I mean, not many left. Not many left. That's sad, but true. But that's how life is. That's how time is. That's how time works. But yeah, like I said, John Amplas does a good job because he brings a certain almost meek outsider feel to his performance. But at the same time, when I say meek, he's not... The attack scenes have a little bit of decent amount of suspense in them, and the movie's not making us feel sorry for this guy, at least in my point of view, and to me that was the right way to go it, because he's doing horrible things. So it's more of, I just sort of wondering what's going to happen next. Just at one point he falls in love with this lady who's lonely, and then funny enough, how he dies, spoiler alert, is he goes to see this woman again and she's committed suicide. Now, I don't know if her state of mind was really that far that I would buy that the character would commit suicide. So there was a part of me going, why did she commit suicide? I mean, I get that she was lonely, but I don't know to the point of committing suicide. So part of me is like, where did that come from? But the irony is that the one person he did not kill, that's where the great uncle finds and hears about and says, you killed her, so I will kill you. Now before that, he went on this rampage where he killed 2 homeless guys and got chased by the cops, but the one person he didn't kill, that's what leads to his death. And the staking scene's a bit wanty because you could tell like he's laying down, and so you could tell that what they did was, while laying down, they just put the stake, okay, imagine this is him. They just on the other side, they just put it on the other side here, and the blood spray. Because when this perspective looks like I'm going into the thing, but it's just, to the side. The reason I say it's a bit wonky is that the stake seems a bit lower, or it does seem a bit to the side, but then it's just a up top shot, and you see there's a little bit, it seems a little bit higher, a little bit more in the middle, so it doesn't really fit the best continuity wise. And rewatching it again, I was a bit surprised they went that route, because nowadays I guarantee you they would go the route of, well, Tom Savini kind of did that in this film called Two Evil Eyes. George Romero did one of the segments, and there's this thing that falls onto a guy's chest. So you'd have the guy's face, guy's head, maybe the guy's arms, but then like a fake chest. So nowadays, I'm sure Tom Savini in retrospect, he would actually see it go in, use the actual guy's face and arms, but you see, but maybe they didn't have the budget for that. Maybe Tom Savini didn't have the know-how to do that yet, so they went. So I do think that staking scene could have been a bit stronger, perhaps with a bigger budget, or if Tom Savini knew then what he knows now. And on a side note, it's sad that Tom Savini does not do effects anymore. I get it. He moved on a long time ago. He has schools teaching people about effects, but it's still, when he retired from that, seemed fairly early he retired from makeup effects. That was a shame, because it would have been nice to see what else he would do. Because he took his hand in animatronic work and puppetry work in films like Creepshow. So it just would have been nice to see what else he would have done, but not. Nowadays, a lot of those effects guys are either gone or retired, so that's sad. But yeah, the film itself, it's not that badly filmed for a low-budget movie. Again, it was interesting to have this dynamic, this differentiating of his the black and white, romanticized view. Like he has this flashback to these villagers following him with pitchforks, and not really pitchforks, but with torches. And then you're supposed to be thinking, is that something that happened to him for reality back in the day, or is this something that he conjured up in his mind to make him think he's his vampire, but he's just a sick, crazy, fucked up individual? And was that because of his upbringing, because his grand uncle, all these guys were adamant about superstition? The movie doesn't really go into answering that question, which maybe in this case was for the better, because if you try to answer it, maybe that'd be a bit boring, and that's not really what the story was about. But again, the movie as a whole, it's interesting to watch, to see an early George Romero film. And I don't know why I'm stuttering. I'm trying to think, was this 1978 that this came out? Because I thought that was the same, I thought Dawn of the Dead came out that same time, so I don't remember specifically when this came out. And I should have looked it up beforehand, but apologize for that. I mean, it says 1978, but then it says 1977. There is another cut, apparently, that's 2 hours and 45 minutes long. The version I saw was an hour and a half. I don't know what the hell you could have for another hour of this movie. I mean, 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think that's a bit much. I do see why it was cut down. It says May 10th, 1978, but other places say 1977. So it's like, well, when the fuck did this come out? 77 or 78? That's what I hate about that. It was screened at the Cannes Film Market in 1977. See, I hate that shit. I'm sorry, this is another random. I hate when they do that it's in one fucking market or one fucking theater or two fucking theaters in 1 year. So, boom, that's the year it came out. But no, 90%, 95% people would not have seen it until the year it actually was fucking released. But, George Romero wanted the film to be entirely in black and white, but they told him no because they wanted a color film, so he at least put some of it in black and white. $250,000 budget. The film looked pretty decent for a flick of that low budget stature. 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. One of the few people that didn't like it said, Martin is pretentious in a way that pornography is when it is dressed up for people who don't want to admit their taste. We're not really coming for that, it seems to say. That's just there because it's an integral part of the story. Talking about the violence. Which is like, if you think this film, I mean, there's some blood and, violence in this film, but, man, Judith Martin, The Washington Post, when you get into the 80s, you haven't seen nothing when it comes to violence. But yeah, 2 hour 45 minute version. I don't know what the hell else could have been in this, because it told its story, and it pretty much, unless it tells more about why that girl truly killed herself, maybe that. 7.1 IMDb, so definitely the highest regarded of the George Romero films. I know George Romero himself said this was his favorite film that he had done. Sorry, I'm looking through the trivia. Apparently, George Romero was in serious debt after the back-to-back failures of the films he had done after Night of the Living Dead. Richard Rubinstein told Romero to declare bankruptcy and start over again. Romero refused because he felt it was inappropriate to back out on the people who had helped invest in Romero's films. So Rubinstein, having respect for Romero, now walked out on those people, partnered up with him so he could help him get out of debt. This was their first film together. Wasn't until they made Dawn of the Dead, which was a huge success, that they were able to pay back George Romero's debts. Because that's the thing with George Romero, is that you look at his films, this happened with John Carpenter as well, a lot of the films did not do well at all. Maybe later, like Day of the Dead did not do that well. Monkey Shine's Dark Half were not box office bonanzas. Night Riders, which to me was a mistake, that's just my opinion, but that didn't do well. And so I think in the 90s he tried to go into Hollywood and try to get films like The Mummy and stuff made. That didn't work out, so then that's where he came back to Pittsburgh, or he came back, did more lower budget films like Bruiser. But it's sad, you know, film directors like that, like Resident Evil. At one point George Romero was going to do Resident Evil, which would have been nice to see. Would have been really nice and curious to see what George Romero's version of Resident Evil would have fully looked like. Because yeah, there are scripts, but we all know with movies, you have a script, then you have the finished product, and they can look two very different things. So what actually would have been in and on the screen, who knows? But would have been nice to see and find out, but sadly, that was never to be. But anyway, Martin, not a bad film. It went at a decent enough pace for its 90 minutes, which I think fits, not 2 hours and 45 minutes. John Amplas, he did a good job in the acting. I always thought the poster was interesting because he had a razor blade, but then it was like vampire teeth. Simple, but I thought effective poster. Like I said, for a low budget, it looked decent for what they were able to do. Definitely felt like it, in a good way, an independent film. And overall, like I said, interesting, at the very least, an interesting flick. So with that said, thanks for watching. Rest in peace, Mr. George Romero. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.